Goodwin joins me now with a three-point plan. He's an expert in red wall politics who has written books on Brexit, populism and public opinion. Matt, great to have you here. So what's the first thing the PM needs to do to bring himself back from the brink?
Well, I've spent the last couple of days talking to Red Wall MPs who have made a really important point, Dan, which is they want to go out and defend the Prime Minister, they want to go out and defend the government, but they feel like they haven't got the Conservative policies that they need in order to be able to do that. And I think, in essence, what he's got to do is come out and just declare all-out war on the cost of living crisis. He's got to get back to what he was promising people in that 2019 manifesto, which was a low-tax Conservative government that was going to reduce the size of the state, was going to unleash the productivity and entrepreneurial spirit of the United Kingdom. And I think they've really lost sight of that original mission, Dan. It's not hard to see why. We had COVID, we had the pandemic, now we've got Ukraine, but he's got to lower the tax burden, the biggest tax burden since the 1950s. He's got to start looking at things like environmental levies. He's got to look at corporation tax and VAT. He's got to start actually, I think, looking at the institutions that are getting all of this spending and say, are we spending this money in the right way? Or do we need to actually now think about reforming some of these big institutions, the NHS being one of them, to make sure that when we do spend money, we spend it in a much more efficient, clever way? And there's just none of that so far, Dan. And I think that's my frustration here. You know, I've talked to people around the PM really since January, and I've been saying, you know, you guys have got to get back to your original core message here. And if you don't, this whole thing's going to come crashing down.
Why do you think he's been so reluctant to do that, Matt? Is it the forces around him? I mean, some people say he's very influenced, for example, by his wife.
I think there's always been a question mark over whether Boris Johnson gets the realignment of politics that you've talked about so much on this show and GBNews have talked so much about. Has he been, too economically and socially liberal in his instincts? Does he really get the people who are voting for him and what they want? I think that's a real question. I don't know necessarily where that influence is coming from, but he struggled to kind of connect with Workington Man. He struggled to connect with the Bolsovers and Mansfields and all of those seats. So to be honest, Dan, if they lose those seats, it's game over, right? I mean, the Conservatives are going to lose a big chunk of the South at the next election, really, no matter what they do. There's going to be a lot of Southern losses in and around London and the Southern commuter belt. So their only way forward here, the only strategy here, is to expand the areas that they've started to eat into in 2019. They've got to expand the Midlands, the North, and all those kinds of areas. And that means being culturally conservative, leaning, pretty strongly to the right on culture and identity, and being economically conservative. What did Lord Frost come out with today? He said, the problem with the government is it isn't economically conservative. Esther McVey said the problem with the government is during the pandemic, it became a socialist government, expanded the state, became sort of big supporter of that. Now, I wouldn't go as far as Esther McVey, but I would say that actually I think Lord Frost has got a point. The economic conservatism here has got lost in the last 2 years. The party's got to get back to that in order to hold this unique electoral coalition together.
Yeah, well, it was quite